Okay, I'll start.
Everyone.
Director Dowdy. Director Keefe. Director Ledbeck. Director Olson. Director Peterson. Director Sopet. Director Silverstein. Director Keefe.
All right, that we're going to move to full time. I will refer members to express the feelings that we have from and then after we do that, come back to the from there. Out of that, we'll go down to the first. Okay. Seeing that. Just to start us off here, I'll say. All the decision of the vote potentially the best very well may be the best deal you can have. With that, really is that in the first step you know where it's going with it, and that's the conversation. Yeah, but so again, there's a few other pieces to the yeah, the frustrating to me about you know this is going, you may not have exactly. I think it's very easy to do and ultimately, not really talking to them. I'll tell you today, Tuesday I was my own talking. I'm going to it was frustrating to me, even when I started speaking out, we still, no company. The only reason I can think for that is that because the sheriff coming out in favor, even though it's being forward. And there's another piece that I but standing in the back of the press conference, notification on my phone from Facebook Live saying, oh, if you like this department of good population online and press conference. Frankly, I'm doing that one. This is the work. And so that's really the kind of that I also want to say through this process, I have heard a lot of things. I've heard conspiracies, individuals board, there's that, I answered that. Like, you could get hundreds of something to come place, various. I hear these conspiracies. It's really bothersome to me. They're all to return to the best. Again, I want to. I think we've got a lot. And so whether this is passing all
You know, happening behind you. Working. Yeah, it's funny.
He's back there trying to change something.
They're saying the volume. They're working.
I'll speak loudly. So for that. So first of all, I want to thank their students. There's actually tireless lobby on behalf of this organization. I mean, I don't know if you guys have ever had this experience going up there. It's a long process, and to go into the house and you ask each member of the committee to launch it. They need to come out and talk to you and discuss with them why you're opposed to it. Marcus did that. Basically, none of us had, none of us saw that first bill until I think it was 10 o'clock in the morning on Tuesday, 3:30 to 8 o'clock, when it was less than 2 hours. You know, that same morning that you were up doing that, I was giving the KSL video talking about why we opposed the bill. First, and so yeah, I mean, a little surprised about the change in the sheriff's position, but I will say that the credit of our good sheriff, I mean, furthermore, is in the right place. Actually, seeing the writing on the wall, and she saw that the sheriff's association was support this bill. And that, another, the bill. First instance, try to give you all some certainty at your jobs. And we are highly sensitive to the fact that this whole thing is highly destructive of morale and that this organization has been a world three of our members plus now this, right? So I think what the sheriff wanted to do is stop that, get it over with, rip the Band-Aid off, so to speak. That's what we talked about yesterday. Remove, really remove the sheriff as the CEO of this organization and permit us to reform the organization in some fashion so that it can thrive and put all your jobs. So while that isn't something that I agree with, and I feel more about it, I support what the sheriff did because I respect the fact that the sheriff was law enforcement and your well-being ahead of, and it's easy to lose sight. What I want to say, I guess, we had a number of the bill, but it's not likely that opposition is not going to be easy to maintain when the Sheriff's Association and sheriff has spoken for it. And I would like nothing more than this debate in front of us, so we can get on with what we need to do. Law enforcement agency in this anyway, we will pick up the effect of this bill does not include cities and townships that belong to this organization from creating a new interlocal agreement that creates UPD 2.0. And we have 2 years under this bill to decide what to do to ultimately separate that part of the sheriff's office and separate it from UPD. The county council has 2 years to figure out how they want to fund countywide services. And the sheriff has a decision to make about, which is, taking her statutory duties that the law requires her to perform. So there are some things that UPD has done in the past that we won't do in the future. And some of those things are like canyon control and search and rescue and those sheriff's department functions. But there's a lot of things in task forces and others that could be drafted to UPD 2.0. And while we can't tell you today what kind of form this is going to take, because this just happened today. The bill hasn't even passed. We have some legal questions to ask about, get answers to, about how this affects the funding for Teresa and what kinds of things that the county council could still delegate to UPD, and what kinds of things the county council would still be willing to delegate. We have all those things to work through. Okay, but the one thing I can tell you, and I haven't had as much chance to talk to township leaders other than just this morning, but I can tell you that I, as the mayor of Mill Creek, am 100% committed to a regional policing model where we partner with other municipalities and townships to deliver the economies of scale that I think we've always achieved through UPD, and to provide a more robust law enforcement agency that can respond in numbers and have assets available to it that my city alone would never be able to afford if we had our own police department. So, and I have talked to members of my council about this, and they are 100% supportive of that idea. And I know that that other mayors and township leaders may not have had the time to do that yet, but I know they're doing that, and I know that, at least, I don't want to speak for them, but I did discuss with Mayor Daly and Mayor Stevenson that we're in on UPD 2.0. So anyway, I know these are words, and it's hard to trust that you're going to have certainty in your futures, but just please understand, all I can give you right now is words. But I hope that you can tell from my passion and from my, past passion for this organization, we're gonna make this work for you guys, and it's gonna be okay. Thanks.
I would agree with many of the things that Jeff said. I do have several questions, and I don't know whether now's the time to ask them or wait until after Sheriff gives her update or the last agenda. But I did have some specific questions.
Terry, if there are more questions, my thinking was for that closed session. Would that be an appropriate time or?
Yes, even though it's not listed as a reason to have a closed meeting in the Open Public Meetings Act, many entities will close the meeting to receive advice of counsel. And because even a public entity is entitled to, private communication. So I think the best place to ask legal questions would be there, so that we don't have something that, and by the way, I don't have answers for the very same reason that the mayor pointed out, is all this happened 24 hours ago. So what I can give you is a best estimate, but I think that's best left to discussions in the closed session. And then we can open it up and have an open discussion afterwards, to the extent the board wishes to continue to make comments regarding the bill, that we put that on the agenda. Again, the timing of this meeting is difficult because we have to give 24 hours notice of the agenda. It was tough to do, knowing that yesterday was a big day, what to put on here. So we did our best to estimate it on Tuesday. And I think that would be the best way to handle it. But I do believe it's appropriate to receive legal advice in a closed meeting. And that's one of the reasons why we should close it and put that on the record as well.
Okay, well, with that, I will hold my questions to them. That I would like to say one statement which has no reflection on UPD, but I'm sure many of you experienced this as well as I did. But I was extremely frustrated at the legislative process. They kept, Tusha was given so much time, whereas those of us that were opposed to the bill had 2 minutes and only 5 could speak, and we had to scramble. During your presentation, scramble who of all the people were there that wanted to speak, and so it was a very disorderly fashion, which is extremely frustrating to me. And one of the things that Tusha kept banging on was saying that there was double taxation going on and all that. And I thought, wow, if this was a court, they would have to bring forth evidence. And being part of the task force that they mentioned, the evidence was presented to them that there was no double taxation, but yet he was able to make all those statements, and there was no way for us to refute that or to counter that at that legislative process. And I thought, wow, this is how government works. This is not fair at all. So it's just my general frustration of it.
You're exactly right.
It gave me, just have no faith in our state's legislative process at all.
Mayor should hold my comments until agenda item 13, then we'll do that.
All right, last chance. All right, we'll move on to the update.
Little bit of good news. So we have Detective Gordon Schmidt here. He was nominated and selected for the U.S. Marshals Task Force Detective of the Year. So he is here in the back. You want to stand up? There are many detectives on that task force across the valley. And the fact that they recognize a UPD detective for that it's a huge award. So we're really grateful to work with our federal partners, and just wanted to say thanks to the U.S. Marshals, because we can't do the job without them. We have a huge partnership, and these guys go after violent felons across the county and across the state. And it just works great to have that partnership. And we have a lot of federal partnerships, but the partnership we have with the Marshals has just been an incredible partnership. Other things I wanted to talk about, we had an employee that made a suggestion that if an employee wanted to donate a kidney, can they do that and have some time off? And I thought it was great to take a look at, and Chief Ackerman was able to research and find that we could just add that to our insurance and it wouldn't be at any cost. So I just want to recognize Heather Bowles from our forensics unit for making that suggestion, and we followed through, and you know, Chief Ackerman is going to talk a little bit about that process, but you know, that just shows you how involved our employees are of trying to make us better. And I just want to recognize her here today too. I didn't have enough time to go find her this morning, but I have talked with Chief on me, and we're going to give her a 4-hour coin for her efforts for thinking outside the box for us. So that's really great. And then we did a little bit of budget updates. We got together as a group. We're moving along with the budget. We're going through shared services. We have met with, well, our CFO has met with the individual chiefs to see what their needs are. She brought it all to me, and we were able to work out the budget to where there were some items that were requested that we could find other funding. So we worked on that. But where we're at right now is adding wages in. I know there's an item to talk about with compensation study, their compensation meeting was discussed there, so I won't talk too much about it. But when we started to prepare the budget, you may know that every year when we prepare the budget, we go to you and we say, how much of your wages do you want to, you know, what percentage do you want to budget at? Well, we found throughout the years, everybody picks a different number, and I need something to start with. So we started at 96%, and our CFO, Debbie Sanchez, was able to put together a 3-year rolling average of what, you know, every year each precinct use as far as wages, and we're pretty confident that's a good percent. But when we meet with you and your chiefs, you have that ability to choose whether or not you want to go higher, lower. But we thought we might as well just start somewhere instead of all over the place. So we did that, and we are going to start scheduling meetings. We would have done that sooner, but we've had a lot of things going on in the last couple of weeks. So we're trying to move as fast as we can on the budget. And also we'll be talking to you of whether or not you want to use any of your fund balance to fund some of your, you know, precinct budgets or shared services. That'll be up to each individual precinct. So if you want to start thinking about that, then we'll I know a lot of our members don't want to dip into fund balances if it's ongoing, and we understand that that's your choice, not ours. So we're just asking the question so we can plug in those numbers. And once we get the wages plugged in, we're just waiting for a couple of more things, and we should be able to come up with a fairly good budget for all of you. And I just want to say our new CFO has just been absolutely amazing to work with. So we were very fortunate to be able to hire her. Any questions for me?
Any questions? All right, item 4, requests for annual open public meetings, act training, and board member training certificates. Very.
Mayor, members of our board. The statute requires annual training on the statute governing nonprofit boards requires Open Meetings Act training. You probably have received this from your entities, I would just ask, it doesn't take long. I actually looked at all of the training. Just, you'll get a certificate from the auditor's office if you took this. I could perform the training at our next board meeting if you would like instead, but it seems like it's probably due to what we're gonna have are some very full plates going forward, that I think that if I could just ask you to make sure that you are certified that you've received the Open and Public Meetings Act training for nonprofits. I think it's the same training you get for the cities. In fact, I'm almost certain it is, but it is something that I just need to get a certificate back from you that you've taken it. So I would ask just that you do that. It's helpful, and I do my best to try to see that we always comply with the act, and that's part of my job. So just going forward, if you do that, it would be greatly appreciated so that we can have proof that you have been certified in that.
How soon would you like that?
For the next board meeting, if you could.
Okay, I assume that's something I'll handle.
Forward to you.
Yes, yeah, just email it to me, and we will keep that for our record to show that we've just done that. There are a couple of other things going forward that there may be mandatory trainings or forms or signatures, and we are doing our best to see that we can be on top of those for you. This is one though that has to be done annually. There's a separate training for members of a nonprofit board that the auditor's office have, but you only have to take that once. And I think all of you have taken that. I'm not 100% certain that Member Cardenas has or Director Cardenas has. He's our newest board member, but that is something that you only have to take once. So if you've already taken that, then you're good.
Barry, can I ask you or me to, if anybody hasn't completed the training, including the district training, I think.
Yeah.
Would you let us know if you have that on file or if you don't? I just think, given the climate that we're in, this organization needs to be super compliant and make sure that everybody is in compliance.
I agree. I will do that. We will make an effort to find out where the certifications sit on that. If we have everybody's, if we don't, we'll notify you by email. We don't have a record of you having taken the course. Even if you have, and then we'll just figure out how to update that. And if you haven't, let's get that done, just because it is a specific requirement of the auditor's office that members of a board understand their role when they sit on a board. And we'll do it. Thanks. I think that's it.
Thank you. So, okay, item 5, annual UPD ethics pledge, Chief Packer.
Morning, everybody. That'd be the easiest item on the agenda today. So the state auditor requires us to submit annually annual fraud risk assessment. So in each of your packets, there's a form for policy that's just basically ethics, compliance, and disclosure of any conflict of interest in your private dealings with that of the UPD. So there's a policy that's also attached with that. You certainly can review when you do have a chance to review that and sign. You just return those back to me or to Harmony. We'll take care of the rest of that. So any questions on that?
Questions?
Great.
All right, moving on to item 6, benefits and compensation committee updates.
Okay, this is Jason. We met yesterday and we got a presentation from GBS benefits about health funds. And we also looked at compensation comparison spreadsheet to see where we stand. Jason, can you walk us through?
Absolutely. So the good news, we did meet with GBS, who is our broker for our benefits. We pushed them to get us some projections for anticipated, costs for next year. Typically, the insurance companies don't release the most accurate numbers until the end of the third quarter, so we were pushing them to try and get some early projections. The early projection we received yesterday is they're anticipating, they gave us a 4% anticipated increase with the caveat that that is a worst case scenario. Looking at the numbers and the usage up to this point, it's very favorable that it will likely come in under that. And it's not even outside the realm that it may come in flat. But they did not want to overpromise and underperform, if you will. But it's looking very good in our and that's for the health insurance side. For the dental side, which is we are self-insured on, we're actually coming in better than what we budgeted, and they recommended that we stay flat on that, or we potentially could look at a decrease there, because we do have a very healthy fund for our dental plan. Any questions on that or any comments from any committee members? Okay. So moving on, the next thing that we talked about, I'll give kind of the Cliff Notes version of this. The sheriff has been pushing for compensation for our civilians. To give a little bit of a context for our civilian pay plan, because I know we regularly talk about the sworn side, and everybody in this room is very familiar with the sworn side, but the civilian side is certainly a lot more complex. So to give some context of what we're dealing with, back in 2016, this board approved a 16-step pay plan for civilian employees. It was about 2 years ago, we started identifying that there was some discrepancies in the way that plan was being implemented with employees. That led us to dig a little bit deeper, and we've identified that there was more discrepancies than we initially thought. So about 1.5 years ago, we put together an internal committee to review our current civilian pay plan, to identify, what's going on, to give some better direction on how to move forward, and ultimately what it turned into is to come up with some more viable options, because the old plan that was implemented had some limitations on it, and specifically to retention, and then to recruiting new employees to come in. With not just the police wage war and all that happens, but also in the private sector, in the civilian side, we've seen dramatic increases in wages, and has definitely affected our civilians as well. So we have seen an increase in civilian turnover, and to compound that problem, we're also having a really difficult time recruiting new employees to come in and replace those vacancies. And a lot of that is based off of the compensation at the levels that we're bringing in. And working in a civilian capacity in a police department, some positions line up fairly easily. tried to model some of this recommendation based off of what they've been doing. But what we would like to move to is a 4-part pay plan, and that would be, we would create a more accurate snapshot of job descriptions for each of our positions and a more structured description as to where they fall in the civilian pay plan. Because right now, some positions are very clearly defined and others are very, very vague, which I believe has led to some of these discrepancies that we have since identified. We would like to clean that up. That will also help us with establishing beginning entry pay for new employees that we're trying to bring in, which we are hoping improves our recruitment. The next would be, we want to keep with the merit increases as they are right now. And essentially, if you have an employee that comes in, day one, they're a brand new employee with no experience, and we train them. And if they just want to do, their job and just go through every year with the merit increases, then after 16 years, they would be a top-down employee, and they would be able to move through that merit system at the annual increases. But what we would also like to do is make it more robust, that we can establish what requirements would be for each position to move more quickly through your grades. Now, we don't want this to happen in 3 years. We want to be measured in what those requirements are, and perhaps it is education, perhaps it's training or certifications, different things that to keep employees engaged. Because what we've been finding is we have employees, some of our chargers, if you will, that have been here that we've invested a lot of time and we're starting to get returns on, are now highly marketable. And we can only move them so fast through a 16-step pay plan, where other agencies are coming in and just fast tracking them to wages. And in the exit interviews that I've been doing with our civilians, the frustration is they love working here. They love the people they work with. They don't want to leave UPD. But when they're looking that they can make $3, $4, $5 more an hour doing the same job in another agency, it's just too enticing for them not to. So we're looking to have a little bit more flexibility in that while still maintaining the merit system, but we can be more competitive with other agencies that are taking our civilian employees. And then also look at grade advancement. So that's not so much within years of service, but also some positions, a good example of that would be our forensics unit. They have an established curriculum or requirements to move up grades, and that's basically the more valuable, the more expertise that they have in their field that makes them more valuable to us. They can move structured through that and increase their grade and their pay. So up to this point, I don't know if there's any questions or certainly any of the committee members. They got the full PowerPoint. I wasn't going to go into all that. But that's kind of the Cliff Notes version of why we are where we're at right now. Yeah.
On that, moving up in grade, that's training and also minimum amount of time at each step.
Yes, that's what we would like to do. Now, we have a vast number of civilian positions, some that are more widespread and some that are very singular focused. So what we're asking for is in this 3-step fix. The first year, we would like to correct all the inefficiencies and all of the discrepancies and bring those that are being underpaid from where they should be, and also identifying those that are being overpaid, because we do have a number of civilian employees that are being compensated above where they should be in the current system. So what we're asking is this year, we would like to bring all those that are out of their grade where they should be in the pay scale current, keep those that are making more or adequately in the position where they're at. And then over this year, we would like to build that the structure of what it would take to move up in your grade and the requirements for that. And it would be time-based education, training, certifications, experience, those kind of things. And then also what it would take to move up steps. And that would also be stipulated. So that's something that's going to take a good amount of energy and time and looking at every civilian position that we have and writing out clear expectations of what it would take. But before we can do that, we need to fix the foundation because our foundation right now is broken. So we want to fix the foundation, write out these very detailed descriptions, and then follow that up with a market study so that we can accurately come in and say, okay, we've identified these areas of our civilians are below market. These are the ones that are currently being paid fair market value. And here's those that are being paid above market. And then we can make those surgical approaches. What we did last year with the civilian increases, which was greatly appreciated and absolutely necessary when we approved the 10% increase, it definitely helped out on the civilian side of things. It helped out on our recruitment. But on the other side, it exacerbated the problem because those that were already being paid too much now got 10% more, which is pushing them even further ahead than those that were behind. So what we would like to do this year is bring all of those that have been behind to where we need to be, and then give us a year to look at every position, and then we can come back next year and look at market and do a market analysis of moving up to be competitive there. Does that make sense?
Chief, how would you handle those that are above the grade required for the position?
So those that are above would be redlined. Redline until everybody caught up to them. So there are a few of those, but there is the majority that are below. So the $1 million, well, not quite $1 million. The question is what it would take to make that correction. And that's going to kind of spill into the next part as we get into civilian or the sworn compensation, and then talking about COLAs and things like that. But the price tag for this first step would be $374,000 to bring all of those employees that are below current to where they should be. And then that gives us the foundation that we can build off of to make all these other corrections.
Chief, I have a couple of questions. That's a really excellent presentation and an acknowledgement of what we need to do with civilian. Is there a template that you're creating? Is it unique to UPD about what are the categories or the slots that civilians get into and what they need to know to advance through the system? And are they coming at the top or the bottom of these categories? And this is something that other law enforcement agencies of this size use to share this information. I'm seeing it in my profession that this is widely shared. It's nationally available. The interns, the recent graduates, they go online, they look around, they know everything. They know more about what they're supposed to be doing than we do, and it's a part of our social media society. So we have to be on top of it all the time in order to be competitive.
Yeah, so to answer that question, we do have some of the positions have already been established based upon what we found with other positions working for Salt Lake County has been one that we've leaned heavily on, largely because that's what we've evolved out of. So we would be leaning on what Salt Lake County is doing with those positions that line up well with ours. We'd also be looking at Salt Lake City, West Valley, those other agencies that are comparable. And I think that the majority of our positions, we would be able to match up with other agencies. There are a handful of those positions, though, that are extremely unique to the way that we are structured. So we would have to, some of that we would have to create based upon what we've done for those other positions and kind of anchor that in. But that's part of the fun task for us is we are going to have to create some of it, but try to anchor it to what we are finding in the other areas.
Hey, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's awesome seeing that it's been recognized that, yeah, the civilian folks working for a UPD or for they need some merit increase, but was just curious if you felt that this plan was a little bit slow in terms of being able to make sure that you're able to keep the people who are already struggling with the seeing that potentially they could be leaving for jobs that could potentially pay more, where the rate increases are going to go up faster. This is as fast as, like, if I heard you right, it's going to take about a year to get things to the next step.
Yeah, that's correct. And that's a very good point. So on our internal committee that's been working on this, we have representatives that work at our different civilian departments. We also have our civilian labor representative that's on this committee. And that's a question that the sheriff asked was, is this going to be enough for morale with because it is going to take, it's going to be a pretty heavy lift to get this past this first stage once we can get this off the ground. And all of them said yes. Now that's not to say there's a potential we could lose a few, but as we are building this, we want to make sure we build it right so that we don't repeat what happened in 2016, where we build a system that we immediately are not following. And so we want to be thoughtful. We want to be transparent and methodical in the way that we build this, and we are confident we can do that in a year. But with that, the compensation study, when we get to doing one of those take an outside agency some months to go in and do an analysis there, which is really what we're trying to build and get to, so that we can make those accurate decisions of being competitive specifically to the different positions. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. And I appreciate it. I wasn't trying to sound like hurry and get it done, but I would just be worried that, I don't want you guys to lose more employees.
It's a very valid concern. So I think it's a great point. Any questions on civilian that we can get to the sworn side? And I will apologize because it's a similar spreadsheet, which I know you guys have seen over the past couple of years, and it probably immediately makes you nauseous. But the good news is the percentages look much better. And if I can, Rick, you be able to pull that up for me? So, and I've also handed out there should be a packet and then also another form that goes with that as he's getting that pulled up. So if you would look at this packet here, looks similar to this. You can see currently where we fall in market is we are in the number 8 position of the comparable agencies here in the Valley. But what I want to point out is the difference between that number 3 position, which the board is trying to keep us competitive in that position, is much tighter than what we've looked at. Last year and certainly the year before, when we were looking at number 8, it was a significant percentage in what the board has done over the last 18 months. We are still very competitive. Even sitting in that number 8 spot, we're still very competitive with that number 3 position in our top out wage and also in our starting wage. So you can see there where we're ranked with the other agencies in the kind of going back to how willing are other agencies to share a lot of their information and also what their anticipation is. We are making these decisions earlier in the budget process than a lot of other agencies are, and can guarantee they're going to be looking at what we do. I haven't heard anything that there is a appetite to start leapfrogging each other again like we've done in the past. The only move that has been recent was Taylorsville. Several weeks back, they approved a $3 an hour increase for their officers, which has moved them up to number 5. Before they made that move, they were down in the bottom 3. And if you remember, that's kind of what precipitated these wage wars here in the Valley, is Taylorsville starting their department and just jumping to the top, which then kind of led that waterfall effect. The HR representatives I've been able to speak to with other agencies, and also what's been collected from the chiefs meetings, doesn't seem to be an appetite to make massive increases this year. With that on here, we put off to the side one, so you can see how many positions each rank would affect, and also the percentage increase that would be needed to move up into that 3 position. Now, that's just the starting point. This is certainly open for discussion. But as you go through here and looking at the officer, it's about 3% to move up to that position. As you go through the sergeant, and then on the subsequent pages, lieutenant, captain, and deputy chief, it's only a 1% increase to remain competitive in those. We're much tighter in those other ranks. The one anomaly is when you look at the chief of police position, we're currently sitting number 5, and we're recommending a 5% increase for that. And as you can see, the top out pay for some of those positions, and that's a good percentage number to be competitive. But we're definitely much more close than we have been in years past. And then when we move from here, I can show you what the impact of that will be to each individual partner. And some of what those percentages are. But I don't know if there's any questions before we move on to that with regards to this document.
One little question, minor, but like in the position of chief and captain, there's only a few comparable. Is that because they're not sharing that information?
No, so what that means is we only have one of those positions in our department. So if you make the decisions of percentage increases, as you look at how many that's going to affect, the price tag of each of those decisions goes up drastically. When 1% to move up an officer is a huge increase as opposed to 1% for the chief or the captain position, because it only affects one person. So to kind of put that into context, so those, as you go higher in the ranks, yeah.
I think what she means is, for example, that not many agencies have that particular rank for us to compare to. That's what
I misunderstood.
I think that's
Thanks
what
for clear.
That's why there's only one captain,
Yeah.
is because most agencies have done away with that rank, but we still have it.
That's correct.
Hey, Chief, I don't know if anybody else would be concerned about it. I'm not concerned about it. I just have a question. In the officer template, our comparison is to the top out. And our ability to recruit is going to be more dependent on the entry level wage. And so I'm really more concerned about our position as it relates to the entry level. I don't think people are going to look at the top out and decide whether they want to come to UPD or not. So I would be more interested in having that sorted by the entry level position and see where we lie there and what percent it would take to move that entry level to the top. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So with that, that's
Mayor, I just have one comment. We have to keep an eye on both, I think, because in this market, they're recruiting lateral transfers from every agency. So we could lose people in this top section just as easy as we could gain somebody in the bottom section. If that topped out wage is making $5 more than other agencies, we got to keep our eye on that as well as the entry level wage is all I'm saying.
I just wanted to make a comment. In our research from the labor side, it's often the potential of what they can earn, right? So there's a couple of factors there. They look at that number probably more than the entry, because they can say in a step plan, I'll be there in X amount of years. So we also have to look at the amount of time that it takes them to get to that point. But that's a very important number. It's that potential for earning.
That's all I'm just saying.
I think to Mayor Dowley's point, that's really good to hear to that comment, Nick, is just if we had both entry and top out on all of these, that's.
Right, you have an extra column of a different sort.
for the,
Yeah, I mean, like you've got this here, and then you have the same information, but sorted according to entry rather than top out.
okay.
Just add another common spreadsheet and rank. Okay.
Oh, so.
Top out officer versus an entry level officer have two sections
Yeah,
for
two.
the officer. Right?
Two columns.
Yeah, I can have that.
80% is too.
Generally, most
Based
people-
on what Nick said, maybe put a star on the top out, so when we look at it, we can say, okay, that's important.
Because most people in the bank are topped out.
Yeah, in
Am
fact,
I wrong?
yeah, we, even at our sergeant rank, most of our sergeants are approaching that topped out. I think we have only a small percentage that are not. So that doesn't really affect, and then certainly when you get to lieutenant and above, there's everybody's, is at that top down. One thing that we haven't looked at, we've talked about in years past, is when you do start focusing on that entry wage, and with us being in a 12-step plan, when you start, that would start compressing on that 12-step, that 12 years to get through. One of the ways some of the agencies have manipulated with that is they've compressed their pay scale. And so when we start pushing on the entry level wage, that starts to condense, in the scale. So that may be something we want to look at in the future if we want to entertain making it more lucrative for the entry level. We can compress that scale to.
You mean go to like a 9-step?
Yeah, which is what some other agencies in the valley have done, is they can top out quicker, so they're entering higher and then they're reaching the top faster. But that would be a big shift in what our current merit increases are, because every year your merit increases to 2.75. When you start compressing that, those are bigger increases annually, and then also you're reaching that top out pay 3 years sooner. So there's pros and cons of that. Any other?
Do you want with these numbers presented and percentages, do you know what the total dollar amount?
Of the cost of, yes,
Yes.
yeah, and we're gonna jump into that. So the feedback from the committee yesterday was we wanted to prioritize, because we have a couple different competing interests here to address. They felt that, and I certainly don't want to speak for any committee members, so you can certainly jump in, but the merit increases, which are budgeted in here on that second sheet, which looks like, sorry, these fingers weren't made to handle paper. Looks similar to this. What you have here is there's the first representation of merit, and that is those employees that are not topped out, that are currently in that 12-step pay plan. The cost of what it would be to approve that merit increase, and that's for the employees that still have not topped out. The committee felt that was the #1 priority, that we fund and approve the merit increases for those that haven't topped out yet. They also felt that the second priority would be the civilian and funding the civilian proposed pay plan. That we fix all of these inequities in our current pay plan, so that we can continue building and fixing the plan over the next 2 to 3 years. They felt that was the second priority. The third priority would be talking about sworn market adjustments, and that's on this packet here, and the percentages that was the third. And then lastly, discussing the cost of living and cost of living adjustment, which a cost of living would be for the whole organization to remain competitive with rates of inflation, and enter into that discussion. Yeah, am I summarizing that?
What's the percentage of the COLA that is it?
So we haven't added that in yet. So we have here up on the screen kind of an interactive where we can manipulate some of these numbers so that you can see what the dollars would be as we move those. So Rick, I don't know if you could scroll down just a little bit to show the percentages down here. So what we put in, and again, this is just a launching point for this discussion, but if you look at the positions here and then the percentage increases for the market, for the chief down through the officer, we plug those in with the percentages of looking at the market analysis for sworn. We have left the civilian and then the COLA at zeros, but we can enter those in. So if you enter in, Rick, maybe put in a percent for COLA. And you can see what a 1% across the board adjustment, how that would increase to each of our partners.
When it shows 3.1% overall increase, is that to just that line item, or is that to
That's to the total budget.
Total
Total
budget.
budget.
Total budget.
Total budget. Now we know with the trying to work backwards from the, we would like to keep it at the 4% overall. And that includes all of the other increases. The biggest portion of getting a accurate budget to the board is this compensation piece. So if we could have some direction for next month, we can plug in some more numbers. Granted, these are not concrete, maybe some direction so that we can fill in. That's a big chunk of the wages are the big chunk of the budget that we still have.
So what number do we need under civilian to give you what you need to bring those below grade up for this 1 year? Is that the 0.5?
So our civilians are ready, so they could go up just a
Yeah,
little bit.
0.5.
Yeah, 0.5.
If we plugged in the 0.5 down below, it would have given you the 374 that you needed.
Yeah, and we've already factored that.
That's already in there.
It's already in there.
Already in there.
Yep,
Before,
so-
okay.
Yeah, so any
And that's only if we
manipulation,
want to do anything additional.
you got it,
All right.
you got it.
I guess my basic thoughts, I mean, it's still what are operational costs gonna be? As we look at, in our last board meeting, we expressed trying to stay within that 4%. And so looking at where we're at this point, I think I'm comfortable with that. And then it's just what's operational. And then if we're under that 4% with operational after, then I would say, all right, let's increase the COLA from there. That's where I'm at personally.
I agree with that. I think the COLA ends up being the variable unless we hear otherwise from staff. But what we heard yesterday, and we haven't had input from the employee, from Nick and his team yet in terms of how we're prioritizing this. But we're hearing that the civilian piece is a critical piece to the budgeting process here this year, that we've made a lot of massive changes on the sworn side based on the environment we've found ourselves in the last couple of years. I don't know what the percent is, but maybe close to 20% over the last 3 years, something like that. And we made changes in the civilians, but the civilians have lagged behind. And we're hearing from leadership that is probably the most important piece. So that 374 staying in as a top priority. The merit piece is the merit piece. We're actually really lucky, I think, that we've got what I think is going to be a 0 URS and a 0 health insurance. I think we'll get to 0 in the medical piece, which I wasn't thinking was a possibility. So that's helpful. And once you start plugging those in, and then you do, you do some surgical market adjustments within the ranks. Until we get, as the mayor was saying, until we get what the capital piece is from staff, the variables, the COLA. And that COLA is just gonna, I think, adjust based on the appetite for this board in terms of an overall fee, which you've already kind of said right now is 4%. But if we get to March and based on what we're seeing here and what feedback we're getting, that we think we need to adjust that it's not realistic, that's when we need to do it. Because my point all along's been, and I still believe this, I think whatever we decide, wherever we land in March from the benefits comp and the finance committee, we need to be pretty committed to that, because I think the last thing we want to do is get to May and have somebody or have a triggered weighted vote to change what that cap is. But right now, we're operating off the assumption that 4% is our ceiling.
I have a question, sorry. I just want to wrap my head around 3% for that entry level officer. Could we go down to that and just change that to 2%, just so I get an idea of what a 1% change for the largest group would do for everybody?
And can you toggle between that, Rick?
Now let's reset COLA to 0. Just change the 3 to 2.
Want me just to change them all to 0 and just put? one
No,
per
just
officer?
the one person doesn't really financially isn't that as big as the larger group. So that brings it to 188. From what was it? 235, okay. 0.5%. All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you, I appreciate it.
All right, item 6, finance committee updates. Director.
Well, there's not much to say that wouldn't be, otherwise it would be redundant. Because in the financial committee, we basically, they updated us as far as the using that 4% and then coming back with what the market value would be in the COLA, and that would be determined until after the benefit and compensation meetings. And talked about that. So I would say that the biggest concern in the financial community was brought up what the said. We wanted to make sure that when we get to that March date, number so that we don't have to keep changing it. There was a brief overview of shared services as well. Everything else we discussed with the financial committee. Just
Okay, acceptance of donations.
Mr. Chair, first off, donations from Cheryl Smith. Advocate for people with autism. And just sure to grab this, but I just want to kind of straight what the donation was. So they created all these bags to go with every office are everything, so that you have somebody dealing with autism. They have stuff like your headphones for sound, cue part you can communicate with, depending on where they're at or the circumstances. So it's a really nice donation. We're very appreciative of that. So you kind of want to explain what it was. So all the officers have this across that. Little things always they're working through the issue, they're under duress. Good talk, so we really appreciate it.
That's great.
Did we do training on this?
With that,
Did we do training on how to work with autistic?
yeah, we have we started that last year, training on it.
I would entertain a motion to accept these donations.
You'll move.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that? All in favor, please say aye.
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 How about you?
Any opposed? Okay, that passes. Thank you. All right, approval of surplus resolution 230201.
So yeah, getting back to see, it's just mostly vehicles. It's all vehicles, 2013 to 2017. Again, as you know, with this market occurring, it's been hard for us to get cars. The bright side of that is when we surplus cars, we're making out like payments, so. You can see the vehicles, purchase costs, vehicle costs. And so our fleet folks are doing a great job keeping fleet healthy, maintaining it responsibly.
Just got a quick question. We base this on, looks like probably on mileage since. They surplus them at a certain point of mileage or years of service.
Yeah, so there's a formula that we use to kind of look at that, but the nice part of it is we also are fleet managers. Put the human perspective on that and look at all those different aspects, mileage, maintenance costs, a number of different factors, so whether surplus vehicle or not.
Okay.
So we don't have just some automatic red line where we surplus it. You know, they manage that, look at all the factors, weigh that in.
There's no other questions. I entertain a motion to approve the surplus resolution.
So, second.
There, motion and a second. Any discussion on that? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Yeah, that passes then. All right, item 10, upcoming subcommittee meetings. We've just got the finance committee meeting on Tuesday, March 7th at 8 a.m. Harmony, I assume we'll see an email from you on that. And any other meetings we should be aware of at this point that are on? Okay. Item 11, approval of the January 19, 2023 UPD Board Meeting minutes.
Move to approve the minutes.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that passes. All right, item 12, closed session to discuss pending or reasonably imminent litigation and discuss matters protected by attorney-client privilege.
Mr. Chair, Jeff Silverstone, I will make a motion for the board to go into closed session for the purpose of discussing and litigation pursuits of the state law and receive legal advice.
We have a motion. And a second. We have a second.
My motion includes a 5 minute.
Director Bradley?
5 minute faster, Brad.
Director Bradley?
Yeah.
Director Brents? Director Cardenas?
Here.
Director Daly?
Yeah.
Director Keighley?
Yeah.
Director Litvak? Director Olson? Director Pearson? Director Procopas?
Aye.
Director Stevenson?
Aye. Okay. You got a couple minutes. Go use your registration too. Before the.